Munatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Harividikacharya Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Pimanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There it is, right on the board. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm going to continue this morning with text 1 from Canto 1, Chapter 1, the very first verse of the entire 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, starting the new year, as we started yesterday, so now continuing. We'll chant responsively. Janmadyasya yaton vayaditaratas charteshu abhigya swarat. Tene brahma hridaya adi kavaye muyanti yatsurayaha. Tejo varimradam yata vinamayo yatra trisargo mrisha. Damna svena sadana rasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. One more time. Janmadyasya yaton vayad itaratas charteshva bhigya swarat. Te Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha. Tejo Varimradam Yata Vinamayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha. Dhammasvena Sadhana Rastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. I'm going to read the translation and then we'll go to the purport where we left off. O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. And I believe we should begin at the bottom of page 42, where it says Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration. Yes? Yes? Yes. Yes? Okay, I'm just confirming. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the Svarupa of the Lord. Svarupa means form, the form of the Lord, manifested by his internal potency, and this potency is distinguished from the external potency which has manifested the cosmic world, which is within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the two in this sloka. Sri Vyasadeva says herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of the material existence is only temporary and illusory, like the mirage in a desert. Actually, he uses two other examples. Fire, seeing water in fire, seeing land on water. So here's a third one. A mirage in a desert. In the desert mirage, there's no actual water. There's only appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality, of which this is but a shadow, is in the spiritual world. Absolute truth is in the spiritual world, spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. This cosmic creation results from interaction of the three modes of nature, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul who appears in so many species of life, including the higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. In actuality, there is no reality in the manifested world, period. There appears to be reality, however, because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead eternally exists with his transcendental paraphernalia. This is, technically it's called Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of the relationship between all things and the source of those things, and how those things relate to other things based upon the source of those things. Sambandha means relationship, and this is one part of that vast wisdom about Sambandha. Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of the relationship of all things with the source. So first was established what's the source, and then this verse, and Gayatri Mantra, and Vedanta Sutra, and the whole of the Vedas have this big topic, Sambandha. So, what's the purpose of all the Sambandha? It's to be clear what the absolute truth is, or vice versa. To understand the absolute truth, one requires to understand the relationship of what comes from the absolute truth with the source. And then again, at least to some degree, the interactions of the things that emanate, the living entities and material nature and so on, how they interact, dependent upon the independent, absolute truth. That's part of the Vedas. And then there's details and details and details and details and details and details, and then back to the source of everything. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Directly meaning he goes around and inspects. These good engineers and contractors, they do inspection. So directly he's seeing, although he's not doing, and indirectly he's knowing because people report to him. Directly and indirectly, under his direction. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows every nook and corner. Although affairs are being carried out by the demigods, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. Even if you don't see, it's seen. Meaning, a truthful person recognizes, I'm not independent. So what's that unseen hand? It's the hand. It's the control of the controller through, although his hand may be unseen. Just like another example Prabhupada gives is a factory. The owner, not the manager, but the owner of the factory may be off on the golf course, putting around on the golf course. But nothing is going on in the factory without his approval. And if it does, somebody gets reprimanded or fired, because their job is to carry out the order of the owner. So he knows. And although on the golf course, he's the controller of what's going on in the factory, so to speak, because ultimately there's a controller above the factory owner. So in a similar way of reasoning, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate controller of everything. And he's the ultimate knower of everything, in part ultimate knower through his expansion as Paramatma, which will be discussed in the Bhagavatam. That's the Lord in the heart. But he's in Goloka Vrindavan, enjoying with the calves, the cowherd boys, and Mother Jasoda and Nanda Maharaj. He's not bothered by information overload of what's going on everywhere in all the creation, in all the different universes. Paramatma's, his expansion, personal expansion, is overseeing all those things. And Paramatma empowers others to do things. So even he is not doing things. Those who he has empowered are doing things, and he can withdraw the power, invest the power in whoever he wants to invest for the maintenance of the universe. Very intelligent. If you want to be God, you have to be intelligent. Super intelligent. All material elements, as well as all spiritual sparks, that's souls, matter and spirit, emanate from him only. And whatever created in this material world is but the interaction of two energies, these same two, the material and spiritual, which emanate from the Absolute Truth, the Personality of God and Sri Krishna. A chemist, for example. Prabhupada was a chemist by profession when he was householder. A chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity works in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And the materials with which he works are also supplied by the Lord. The Lord knows everything, directly and indirectly. And he is cognizant of all minute details. And he is fully independent. He is compared to a mine of gold, and the cosmic creations in so many different forms are compared to objects made from the gold, such as gold rings, necklaces, and so on. The gold ring and the gold necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mind, but quantitatively the gold in the mind is different. Therefore, the Absolute Truth is simultaneously one and different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the Absolute Truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the Absolute Truth. Boy, that's a really packed up paragraph. Now for new people, again, as we spoke yesterday, in preparing the Bhaktivedanta purports here, Prabhupada was very cognizant of his audience, because writers and speakers need to know their audience. Just like a scientist may write a technical journal for the scientific community and then a public version that's intelligible by people who aren't technically savvy. The principles don't change, but the audience has to be able to understand its message. And so, just like some of your parents. And when you speak to your children, you speak in certain language. When you speak to your friends, you speak in same points, but in different language. You speak to someone who's a superior, you speak in different language. The principle doesn't change, it's just you know your audience and according to the audience you speak. So Prabhupada's audience is the world. The world that knows nothing about nothing, or thinks they know something about everything. But really, according to the Bhagavatam, misdirected. Some people are fortunate to know that they don't know. And some people are unfortunate and think they know when they don't know. An example Prabhupada gives is, a music teacher will charge one fee if somebody already thinks they know, and a lesser fee for somebody who knows they don't know. Because the person who thinks they know, it's more difficult to teach and train. You have to, anyway. So Prabhupada's audience is the world. So he knows, by design, he wants scholarly people to read, so that scholarly people will promote in their classroom or in their writings or wherever scholars do their thing to the world this message. And if it doesn't suit the taste and sensibilities of a scholar, they'll trash it or neglect it, one or the other. But he wanted them to not trash it or neglect it. So it had to be a little rigorous enough that scholarly people would buy standing orders. Standing orders meant at the time he had 1, 2, 3 cantos, and then he had a traveling party that would go visit universities and invite different professors and libraries at universities to buy a standing order. Standing order meant, as the next volumes are, here's the existing volumes, and as the next volumes are available, they'll come to your door. Our publishing house will send them right to your door. And you can say thank you, and you can make a subscription for that standing order. Many, all over the world. Languages, so therefore, after covering the English-speaking parts of the world, it became increasingly important, at least for this particular aspect of educated people coming to know the Bhagavatam's message in disciplic succession, translated into French and German and Italian and this and that. But his audience was, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur did the same thing. I mean, not exactly the same thing. He wrote a little booklet in English and sent it to universities around the world because he explicitly said, at least educated people should know. And for starters, if educated people come to know and think, wow, Lord Chaitanya, so it was specific, his topic was Lord Chaitanya, his life and teachings, then, that's a beginning. It's a foot in the door. Because people don't know. Lots of people don't know. So it was an effort to have at least persons who are in a professor role, educated, they like knowledge kind of people, to give them knowledge about the life and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And so Prabhupada wanted to do the same, because it's true. There's lots of literature that explains this. Even today, with the lack of Vedic culture, intellectual people greatly influence the administrative people, and the administrative people roll over the other people, the business people and the worker people. So the intellectual people are really important. It's one of the things that tyrants do. They eliminate the intellectuals systematically. You're intellectual, or whatever they do with them. Tyrants, that's what they do. Historically, because they're free thinkers. You can't have a free thinker around when you're a tyrant. You eliminate them. So conversely, when there are free thinkers, there are intellectual people that are independently thoughtful, it's very important to connect those independently thoughtful, learned people with transcendental wisdom, the Vedas. And not a perverted presentation, but a transparent presentation. Though it was part of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's strategy and others, so Prabhupada's doing like that. But then it's people in general. What do people in general understand about simultaneously one and different? So how do you present that to a yet to be educated audience? And this other message that's a little delicate, or for the binary processor of the mind to get it, that this absolute truth is both directly and indirectly cognizant of everything. Say that one again. And is fully independent at the same time. So he's addressing both audiences. Next. Conditioned souls, that's us, by the way, beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe down to the insignificant ant, are all creating. But none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator other than his own self. This is called Maya, or illusion. Because of his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses, and thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape without any aid of a superior intelligence. This is refuted in this sloka by Srila Vyasadeva. Quote, "Since the complete whole, or the absolute truth, is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth," unquote. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Like, if you get a pain in your arm, or you stub your toe, that's something that happens in the body. The embodied feels it, because consciousness stretches from the soul to the body and out, even outside the body. Consciousness extends. So the embodied comes to know what's going on with the body. Similarly, the creation is the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. This is really rich, so I think I'm going to spend some time on this topic. In the world, there are many ideas about God's identity. Of course, there's atheists who say there is no God, and then there's theists who say there is God, and the theists who say there is God, that's, I want to discuss a little bit, many ideas. Too many. Mind spinning, too many. Now, there's lots of similarity to those many ideas. And many people who are not refined in their hearing about God, they say, oh, that's the same as my religion. But you listen more acutely or delicately, and there are not just minor, but even major differences. So a similarity is there's one source of everything. That's God. Generally, that's accepted. And the platform of religion. Religion meaning those that have scriptures, even if it's like a man-made scripture, rather than a God-given scripture. But there's God. He's the source of everything. Then starts coming differences. Like, for example, I heard this from Rabindra Swarup Prabhu, who's a PhD in philosophy. So he uses this terminology, and I forget which is which. There's a term about God, those who think of God as, can't remember the language, theology and divinity or something like that. So in Europe, during a certain period of time, during the Industrial Revolution period of time, there was a lot of interest in machines. And particularly, the Germans and Swiss were really fascinated by clocks. It's still today famous for being clock and watchmakers, German and Swiss clocks and watches. So with that fascination with machines and clocks, that idea spilled over into theology. And so an idea about God being the source of everything went like this. He's like a big watchmaker, a clockmaker. That is, everything comes from him, and it goes into the shop, and after the watch or the clock is purchased, God doesn't have anything to do with the watch or the clock, the creation. That's it. He just creates, and it's kind of on his own. And it was thought that this takes care of the problem, why is there suffering in this world? Because if he supervises the creation, and suffering happens, he bears responsibility for that suffering because he's overseeing the thing. But if you have this other model, he still created a creation where people can suffer, but he didn't create the suffering. Because people create their suffering by making bad choices of how you interact with the creation. Like sell somebody a clock, and they can use it as a hammer or who knows what. Throw it at somebody and hurt them, or use that as a weapon or something. So the utility of creation is in the hand of the person who's moving around the creation. It's not God's responsibility. So anyway, it's something like that. Just aside from what the implications are, there's one model of God being he's the source of everything, but that's all he does is create. And then there's another model that he's fully responsible because he manages everything that he creates. Now, exactly how he does that, there's different ideas of how he does that. So there's different conceptions of God being the source of everything. And then there's a group of people in the spiritual marketplace that say that source of everything is not, there is a source of everything, and that source of everything is the homogeneous oneness, or Brahman, or whatever their nomenclature is. And so all the stuff that comes from that homogeneous oneness, impersonal Brahman, is all illusion, and there's only one reality. That's this impersonal Brahman. And we actually belong, so there's, you get the idea, and on and on and on. Even when there's an idea of there's a source of everything, God, whatever that is, different ideas. So anybody that's, a sincere searcher for truth, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a book published that's about that thick called Search for Truth. And search for truth in the same way that this verse of the Bhagavatam is identifying truth with a capital T means the source of everything. That's the absolute truth, according to Vedanta. Truth can mean as opposed to false. It's true. And then there's a more profound meaning of truth, meaning it's the basis of something else. Existential basis of other things. So what's the existential basis of all things? Search for truth. So those that are searching for truth, they really want to know. We've probably all been through this in our own autobiographical way. Search for truth, and there's a lot of options out there. And we already had one, or something of one, maybe kind of a kitschy version of what that source of everything is, what the absolute truth is, before we came in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam and disciplic succession and so forth, Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we all have our little story. But when you're searching for truth, it can be perplexing. Which one of these truths? This sounds good, that sounds good, I see some flaws in this one, I see some flaws in that one, but I'm not so skilled at seeing flaws, and my business is not just to find flaws, my business is to find the truth. Anyway, it can be a little exhausting and not so conclusive. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita tells us what that truth is discernible through disciplic succession. So minimally, we need that. And that's right in this little section we just read. Krishna gave that knowledge of the absolute truth. He revealed himself to Brahma. And Brahma in turn passed it on. But even persons, Brahma and the other great, they become bewildered by, they and us, what to speak of them, what to speak of us, even they become bewildered. Muyanti yat sorayaha. Muyanti, bewildered. Yat sorayaha, the great demigods, even up to Brahma, can sometimes be bewildered by the illusory potency that makes that which is not factual to appear to be factual. What to do? So Bhagavad Gita teaches us here, minimally, for starters, here in disciplic succession. Not so easy. Where are you going to find disciplic succession? So those that are in that disciplic succession have a big opportunity and responsibility to others. At least make that sound vibration available. I really like that video that we saw last night, Prabhupada saying, whether they understand or don't understand, or even whether they hear or they don't hear, the sound vibration is itself auspicious and it creates auspiciousness, so at least the opportunity to connect with the source of everything is made available through this very simple process, sound. And therefore broadcasting, in appropriate ways, not just big loudspeaker on the roof, but broadcasting sound vibration in appropriate ways is important. To in a place of darkness, because this world where we live, literally and figuratively, it's a place of darkness. Literally in the sense that without the light of the sun, or the moon or electricity, without those, it's a place of darkness. So you need light in order to see in a place of darkness. And figuratively also, it's a place of darkness. People don't know. They're primarily covered by this deluding potency, and they accept that which is not factual or real to be factual and real. And vice versa, that which is factual and real to be not real. Because of darkness. Because it's a dark place. And with that comes suffering. And those that have knowledge or are in the light, they can see the suffering. It's totally unnecessary. And people aren't attached to suffering, they're attached to the sources of suffering. The source of misery. Very unfortunate. What to do? Bring in some light. So that's the light of the Bhagavad. Very creatively, little background. When Prabhupada somehow had some connections in Japan. It was Indian people that had gone to live and make their livelihood in Japan. So he was invited to come to Japan. But he was interested in the Japanese people. He was interested in the indigenous people everywhere, the African people, and not just the non-resident Indians who make their livelihood in Africa. He was interested in the people. So what he did, very creative, through his devotees, he identified an artist, turns out the artist was from China, who was really good at traditional Eastern art. And he commissioned, the BBT commissioned this lady to make paintings to illustrate the Bhagavad. But in a manner that the people of that culture could relate. You know, like wind and mountains and streams and etc., etc. You know, nature with traditional art, and then indicate how the Bhagavad illuminates those topics. So, and he called it the light of the Bhagavad. It was for the Chinese people, from the Japanese people. And then it became translated into Chinese and other languages in Asia. And very relatable, culturally, visually, thematically, and in terms of teaching, very relatable. But the root was the Bhagavad. And then in course of time, the translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam into Japanese and Chinese and this and that was arranged. And now it's available. Along with Light of the Bhagavad, with beautiful traditional illustrations. It's I'm just sharing something because it's, boy was Prabhupada strategic. He wanted to reach the heart and the mind of the world. And his creativity to do that was fascinating, and his determination was indomitable. And how do you reach different audiences? You have to know the audience. So when the audience is the world, he has this Bhaktivedanta purports from Canto 1 that he did while sitting in India. But Prabhupada described, when he reached New York, he would go for walks every day, specifically, he explained, to see how people live, because he wanted to know his audience. You know, what are their values? What's their mind? How do they dress? How do they this and that? Because he's an elderly sadhu, 70 years old from India, coming to New York. You know, what a monstrous place. I want to reach the hearts and the minds of these people. So he came to understand different things by the agency of Super Soul. Directly and indirectly, he became aware, and then offered Krishna consciousness accordingly. And then different audiences. I think I'll just say one other thing. When you listen to his recorded lectures, listen very carefully to where he gave the lecture. Because when he gives lectures in Bombay, you can count on the fact he's going to give a ton of scriptural references in Sanskrit. This is authoritative. And when he spoke, for example, in contrast, at 26 Second Avenue, hardly any scriptural references. The theme, the message, according to the audience. Because they're not going to, they'll be put off rather than in awe that here's somebody that knows all these scriptural references. So it was audience specific. So it'll help you, it helps me, understand how sensitive, how tuned in Prabhupada was to the audience and their values, and how he would emphasize something differently in the UK than he would say the same thing in the US. Really tuned in. Know thy audience. Doesn't change the message, it's just making the message relevant and relatable to the audience. No hedging. And anyway, so the first 3 verses are a little package that says a whole bunch. In one sense, the whole of the Bhagavatam, one could say, it's in a capsule form. It's in these first 3 verses. And then the rest is expanding the messages of those first 3 verses. Very important, very foundational. Vyasadeva is literary incarnation of Krishna, so it's perfect. So let's see if there's some discussion on any of these things. Yes?
On this point of Srila Prabhupada being very sensitive to his audiences, compromising the message, yet knowing his audience. There are also statements he makes that may not be very popular with certain audiences.
Yes.
For example,
There's so many examples. Views on women is a big one.
And so how do we, that comes up, that particular one comes up often, how do we understand it? Prabhupada was very culturally sensitive. We also have some statements that seem to irk some audiences.
Comments on color, race. Not that he wasn't aware. Why did he say those things? Well, I was recently asked this question by a discerning Bhakti Vriksha group leader, a home gathering group leader, who said, we're reading and we come across things like this, how to address them, specifically. For me, I don't have a doubt, but how to help another person, that the Prabhupada was less than a perfect representative of Krishna, but how do we explain it? So, from the starting point, specifically how he was sensitive to audiences, I don't have the qualification to evaluate the methodology of our founder Acharya. I have faith. But so with that preamble, he wanted us to simultaneously, his audience, to simultaneously reach the realm of the absolute truth, that is, there's a source of everything, that source of everything is a person, we're part and parcel, we're meant to serve that source of everything. And he wanted us to come to that standard. And sometimes he would shake his audience purposefully because of their attachment to the illusory conception. So now he had the power and capacity to know when to do that, when not to do that. I don't. He did. I have confidence, full confidence, full conviction. So a part of his intention was to shake his audience from their worldly convictions. And there are statements within the big picture that Prabhupada would say, these messages apply to those who are not devotees. They don't apply to those who are devotees. There's not the preponderance of that, but he is not going to hedge or compromise on statements of the Bhagavatam. He's not a compromiser. He's not weak. Now he certainly could have, should he have is another, but could he have softened when he was confronting and say that more often? This message applies to people who are not in the realm of bhakti, and those that are in the realm of bhakti, that doesn't hold the same. He could have said it more, to be more, sensitive to his audience, that he's trying to shake from that conception. So now, as a world acharya, he made some decisions in order to preserve Vedic culture. Here's one example. At least, for me, it's very powerful. Queen Kunti, or Devahuti. Now, Queen Kunti is a perfect person. She's not becoming perfect. She's a perfect person. She's Devahuti, mother of Lord Kapila. She's a perfect person. They both speak of themselves in demeaning terms simply by being in a body of a female. At the same time, they show their capacity to be eminently qualified. Lord Vishnu confirmed Devahuti is as qualified as you are to Kardama Muni. But she was taking the position otherwise to hear from Kapila Dev, an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, or etc. Kunti was speaking like that with Krishna. Yet she is disclosing she knows everything, although she's saying, I don't. I mean, she doesn't know everything. She knows everything that a pure personality can know. She disclosed that she knows, but saying that I can't know, I don't know, etc. No, in a certain sense, from a transcendental perspective, she didn't know. She didn't know about Mother Jasoda, and she couldn't clearly discern why he was unborn is born, and things like that. And then she goes on to recite different ways that people think. And then finally concludes with what our acharyas say, that's the real reason why he appeared. So, culturally, it's important that on the one hand and on the other hand, those in female bodies It's an equal rights organization. Bhakti, everyone. At the same time, it's good to know one's position socially, and then conduct oneself socially, not just cosmetically, in the right manner. And so Prabhupada's intention was both, to preserve culture and to elevate society beyond those cultural nuances. Just to take, the name of Krishna, we discussed this the other day. This is, I think, in Detroit. The name of Krishna, maybe it was here. The name of Krishna is the perfect name. You asked the question. The name of Krishna is the perfect name. So it doesn't mean we demean other names. When Prabhupada met with religious leaders in Australia, he said, chant the Jesus prayer. Wasn't cosmetic. Take the name of God. He clearly understood Jesus is not God, he's the Son of God. Take the name of Jesus. Knowing that that name is going to be so beneficial for them. But it's speaking a principle. And then to another audience, so this name of Krishna is the best because. Now, he didn't say that to everyone and everywhere, but so, especially sensitive is what's put in writing, different than what's spoken, because what's writing can be reprinted and so on. And so there are, for example, in the Bhagavatam, some key passages that are really hot, controversially. So what was his intention? And so that part of addressing the language is, what was the intention? Another explanation is English wasn't his first language. So he relied, as does a good author, as does Ishwara Puri, relied on persons to proofread. And is the language conveying the intended meaning? He wanted his editors to do that. Somehow certain passages stayed the way it was. This celebrated controversial one that's out there. And so, that's another explanation. His intention wasn't necessarily captured by the language because English wasn't his first language. He spoke English. He was, lucid in Bengali, Sanskrit, and English. But it wasn't his primary language. You read the initial Bhagavatam that didn't have BBT editing, and it's a little, it's readable, but it's a little tough going. Anyway, that's another explanation. How do we understand why he spoke the way that he spoke? Being audience sensitive. Anything else? Oh, here comes the microphone.
Bhagavatam, I've been reading for the past number of years daily.
1.5 years daily.
2.5 years.
2.5 years daily.
And each time when I'm reading the purport, it's like a mystery book. When I'm reading the purport, I think, what is there in this purport? The verse seems like very, the previous verse and the next verse, not much difference in translation, but Prabhupada comes up with a purport like a completely different information in each purport. So one time I was thinking like 18,000 verses, so much of purport, writing, so much of knowledge in that whole thing. Was there any did, like when he was coming to US, like, he would go to Rupa Goswami's, like, was there anything related to that?
Of
Before he
course.
was writing to Sri Bhagavatam?
Yes. Just step back and say, look at the result, and that says, was there empowerment? So certainly there was empowerment, and multiple empowerments. But the primary one that he attributes is his spiritual master. And, not only who his spiritual master was, but his fidelity to him. And then Prabhupada said, the way I'm able to write and speak is because I was eager to listen. Because I heard, now I can speak and write. I mean, the super soul connection, but it's a qualification of hearing. And the qualification of hearing moves the contamination from the heart. So then he had, the super soul connection. That's not like an ordinary person. Not just scholarly. Another time, more than once actually, he said he would sit and listen, busy as he was, he would sit and listen to devotees reading in the Bhaktivedanta purports, and he would at intervals say, this is Krishna speaking. I was just writing what Krishna was speaking. And therefore he liked to hear it because it was Krishna speaking. No, it wasn't just cute, he was sharing. Why would he be interested just to hear his own writing? We can write some more. Okay. Yes, I think we'll just end here. Do you take this last question?
Particular verse, it is said that the demigods themselves are put into illusion. So, particularly taking the example of Lord Brahma, who received the direct knowledge from Krishna himself, and these demigods being so powerful than the living beings here on earth, and they are put to illusion. So, sometimes seeing this verse, it seems like it is the power of Maya is so powerful. It is so intense, and I feel hopeless sometimes. So
I thought that's what you were going to ask. So what? What to do?
What to do?
Okay. Two things. Recognize, yes, I'm not independent. I'm vulnerable. Two, therefore, let me take great care when moving about this illusory energy and take deeper and deeper and deeper shelter for protection. That's Sharanagati. One of the 6 limbs of surrender is I require protection. I'm not independent. But to speak of these greater people, I'm this little person. I need protection. Yes? So that's what to do. Be very cautious. Take deeper and deeper, consciously take deeper shelter, not just upon occasion, but as a cultivation of your spirituality, your Krishna consciousness, deeper shelter. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.